Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty Lapone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with theater's biggest names. I'm Alan Seals, and this is a very special episode because it's the very first episode of March 2019, and March 2019 is the Frozen takeover month. Frozen the musical has taken over my social. They're going to do some Instagram takeovers. At least 4 of the episodes released this month will all feature guests from Frozen the musical. And we'll have a couple of giveaways. We'll have of course, Instagram takeovers, maybe even a little bit more. So if you're hearing this and you haven't yet started following the podcast on Instagram, please do so now so you don't miss anything at theater_podcast, both on Instagram and Twitter. And then if you need to head over to Facebook, it is /official theater podcast. This episode here is with Joe Carroll, who just took over the role of Hans in Frozen. And actually, I don't know why. And in hindsight, this seems pretty obvious. But when he said this in the interview, it surprised me. One of the most things he surprised me out of everything he said was that, Hans is basically 2 characters in Act 1 versus Act 2. Act 1 is this guy who's coming in and Love is an Open Door, this iconic song. He's really in love with Anna or really smitten with her at least. And then Act 2 is the bad guy. He turns into this guy that we want to loathe. And it was actually made me laugh when he said this too, that his curtain call, he's been in the show at the time we recorded it, the episode, he had been in the show for just a week. And he's already getting booed during curtain call in a good way. The kids boo him because they hate Hans by the end of it. It's just funny. These smaller individuals come to see the show, and it's so real to them. So during curtain call, he gets booed, and somehow that's enjoyable. Also, I've witnessed a lot of struggle from actors coming out of other schools that don't have the business knowledge or guidance to land their first agents or jobs or what have you. But Joe's story is actually quite incredible. He seems like he was very focused, very smart, and he made the connections necessary to make it through University of Michigan. But he made it straight out of college into New York, and very quickly got an agent, landed the first role in Once the musical, and kind of the rest is history. So this guy plays 10 instruments. He's super talented. He's super smart. Please enjoy this episode here with Joe Carroll.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Made his Broadway debut in 2012 in Once the Musical, following that with the 2013 production of Romeo and Juliet with Orlando Bloom, and then went on to replace Santino Fontana in the 2014 production of Cinderella. He was recently in Bandstand, the Boston production of Moulin Rouge, and just now started in the role of Hans in Frozen, Disney Frozen, star of stage and screen, Joe Carroll. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing on this wonderfully snowy, cold morning?
Yeah, it's snowy and cold, but things are good. I was just saying I'm sick of wearing scarves and hats and about ready for spring.
Yeah.
But I was saying on the way up here, I get translucently pale this time of year, so I'm about ready to just have the sun come out.
Are you you're a beach guy?
I feel like there are beaches all around New York City that you never go to. I don't know. We went to the Rockaways one time, went to Jersey Shore a couple times. I'm just ready to be in Central Park. I love to play Central Park softball or go running, just do anything outside. So,
well, you're an athletic guy too, right? You come from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
What part of Michigan did you grow up in?
Well, I moved around a lot as a kid. Actually, grew up for 10 years in a suburb of Chicago. Geneva, Illinois, and then moved to Michigan for high school and college. And my parents are still in Michigan. They live in Grand Rapids, so west side of the state. And my dad makes labels, and my mom is a caterer. She's a chef, and I somehow ended up on Broadway.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But first off, can you cook?
I can cook.
Yeah,
I'm all right in the kitchen. That was kind of a prerequisite. My sister and I both, we know our way around a grill and cast iron and we can Juliana pepper and stuff like that. So
I wish my parents had done more of that with me. Like I want to go home and cook for my kids now, but I'm just like, okay, SpaghettiOs. Here you go. And then like real people who know how to cook, they're like, oh, that's so easy. You just put in the things. And I'm like, that requires advanced planning and training that I don't have.
Yeah.
So, but I want to like matrix that knowledge out of you and just jack it in the back. Be a great cook. But so we got there because you moved to Michigan. Big hockey fan, right? You played a lot of hockey.
I played hockey growing up. I played a bunch of sports growing up, but hockey was the big one. I was from about 4 or 5 years old. I played competitive ice hockey, and sort of always did shows and things as well. I've been doing musicals since I was in the 3rd grade. But I was an athlete. I played baseball. I was a horrible basketball player, but I liked basketball. But hockey was the big one. And then as we were sort of talking about just before we got started, I got hurt when I was going into freshman year of high school. I got pretty nasty. I broke 2 vertebrae in my back playing hockey. It was pretty nasty. But I think sort of, and this is a bigger thing, I then got more into musical theater and theater in the arts because I was sitting around in a back brace. So I like picked up the guitar and I went back and I played hockey all through high school, but never really took it to the next level. And then musical theater just slowly started to take over as it does throughout high school. And I started quitting all the sports to focus on this stuff. But I have a buddy who I played with in high school who's on the Red Wings, which is very cool. So Luke Glendenning, number 41 on the Red Wings. We played together in high school. And but that was kind of the hockey background. And it's fun actually in Frozen because Bobby Creighton, who plays Wesselton, is a huge hockey fan. And so I'll show up in the dressing room and he's got the Maple Leafs on his computer. And so he's like watching the Maple Leafs on his computer. I'm watching the Red Wings on my computer, and we're just talking hockey. We have to go on stage now. But it's been really fun. I share a dressing room with Bobby and Kevin, who plays Oaken, and it's a really fun dressing room.
Very sports oriented.
Yeah.
The only hockey team I ever followed was the Maple Leafs, but only because I have family in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So my family was not a sports family, or a cooking family, but my family was good. I promise. And then, you said when you broke your back, that's when you picked up the guitar more. Is that when you first started to learn it? Because you play. How many instruments do you play? First off,
I play like, I guess it's 10-ish. The harmonica is an instrument. I play it poorly. Things like that I kind of picked up. But I play. I started as a drummer, and that was where Bandstand. Why Bandstand was so thrilling for me because I was a drummer since I was in diapers. I crawled up on my uncle's drum set and banged around when I was literally. There are pictures of me as a baby. So I always did that. Then I had to take piano lessons because mom said you had to take piano lessons. And then I picked up a guitar in middle school, and really started to play more and more. I think as I was kind of sitting around injured and taking that more seriously because there's only so much you could do, I guess, when you're sort of casted up after an injury. So, and then from that, I learned how to play the mandolin because of Once. I played the ukulele because of Once when I made my Broadway debut, and I had to learn how to play some of these instruments, but I had kind of the working knowledge to play a little bit of bass and play, a little bit of melodica and, things like that. So, but yeah, that was the coolest part of Bandstand was just bringing the drums back into the fray. Cause I've been, there was the song Banging on a Trash Can, the Doug Funny, like Doug the cartoon, sort of thing. And, all I want to do is bang on the drums all day. That was kind of me as a kid.
Right.
I wanted to be a drummer. I mean, that was kind of I wanted to be a rock and roll drummer as long as I could remember. And then again, musical theater takes over, and you can either be in the choir in high school or you can be in the band. You can't be in both. So I decided to be in the choir. You start singing, you do the musical. Next thing you know, you're trying, going to college for it, and your parents are freaking out, and and it comes out in the wash that I'm able to pay my bills. So,
right.
Yeah.
What was your first musical in high school? Do you remember?
Hello Dolly.
Really?
Hello Dolly, yeah. I was Barnaby in Hello Dolly. I could get you some pictures of that probably, but it was great. And the kid, Johnny Stellard, played Cornelius. He was 2 years older than me. He went to Elon for musical theater. He was in Evita on Broadway. He's done a number of Broadway shows. And he and my other friend, Mikey Winslow, who also went to my high school, he's currently in Hamilton. He just took over as a swing in Hamilton. Those two guys were really kind of my high school idols who said, sort of paved the way and said that, you can go to college for musical theater, you can major in this, it's a career. And they really sort of paved the way for me as a kid in the Midwest to, I want to be on Broadway. Where do you start? And I had a couple of great role models with those two. But yeah, so it was Hello Dolly. Sophomore year we did Beauty and the Beast. Junior year we did Fiddler on the Roof. And that was the least Jewish production of Fiddler on the Roof that there's ever been in West Michigan. And then senior year we did On the Town. And, it was I had a great high school, a great background. And, we did great shows and there was a fair number of people who made it to New York and are doing the thing.
And you went to University of Michigan, yeah. And did you major in theater there? Or music? Or
musical
what was
theater, yeah. I got a bachelor's of fine arts in musical theater. That was incredible. That was an incredibly lucky and remarkable experience to get in there. It's extremely competitive, and I live in Michigan, and so my parents were thrilled about a little in-state tuition. Never hurt anybody.
Yeah.
And I actually get a lot of flack for that from my classmates because I was one of the two kids in my class from the state of Michigan, and a lot of people are still paying off some student loans to pursue their Broadway dreams. And I got out luckily. But Rachel Hoffman, who cast Frozen, is a Michigan grad. Ashley Blanchett. There's in our show right now. Ben Bogan, Jeremy Davis. I think there's a couple more, but we got a decent Michigan contingent in Frozen.
It's interesting that I guess, what you're involved with is what you notice, you pay attention. Like you buy a Volvo and then you see all the other Volvos on the street, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm from North Carolina and I feel like I had a string of people I'd talked to that were all from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. Like Beth Level and I, we're chatting and passing the podcast. And, she's from Raleigh where I went to college. And it's, it was just like one after another of people. But that's funny.
I love Beth. But she is a riot.
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, she had us in stitches all the time during the whole bandstand process. Mm-hmm. She's a Broadway legend, such a gem.
Yeah, she's amazing. Well, back to you. That's who we're talking to.
Back to me. Think about me.
Let's think about you. You mentioned instruments all along the way here, but you did choir and whatnot. When did you realize that singing was part of your repertoire?
Yeah, like I said, I was kind of doing the musicals all through middle school. I started actually, because the story goes, my mom didn't want to get a babysitter. She was asked by a local community theater in Chicago, where I was in middle school growing up at the time, to be in the adult ensemble of the sort of community musical at my school, which was Annie, and they needed nuns in the NYC scene, and they needed some older actors. And she has a beautiful singing voice. And so she goes to rehearsal. She's singing in the background in the chorus of Annie. And she'd bring me to rehearsal and I'd sit there and I was completely enthralled. And the director saw that I would just kind of sit there and, other kids are, running around, wreaking havoc or whatever. And I would just sit and watch. And so she asked if I wanted to be in it. We, little NYC kid, they needed a newspaper boy, like an extra read all about it newspaper boy. So that was in the third grade. And then it was always just something I did. It was something I did one every year. And, there was this community of kids that I liked and it was fun and it was exciting and did that all through middle school. And then I started taking voice lessons in like 8th grade. And I had like this voice teacher who would just, take me through some basics. And then you get to high school and you have to start making decisions. There's only a certain number of hours in the day. There's certain seasons. So I had always played golf. And so I was like, I'm going to play golf in the fall. I'm going to play hockey in the winter. And I'm going to do the musical in the spring. And you can either be in the marching band or you can do choir. You can't do both. So I decided, all right, I don't really read music on the drums very well. I'm kind of just a like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 rock and roll drum. So I'm like, all right, so we'll do the choir. And so I started freshman year singing in the choir, and I got a solo first semester freshman year in the like freshman choir or whatever. And I sang this solo, and since we all have ridiculous egos, everybody was like, "You're so good," and then I was like, "Oh, maybe I can sing. Maybe this is something I like to do." And that was really that was when it really just all hell broke loose. And I started singing and taking voice lessons seriously. And then, like I said, just quit everything, quit the sports, quit this, quit that, and focused on singing, more voice lessons, more dance classes, more acting, stuff. And that was really when it all started. Freshman year of high school was really the beginning. And we moved from Chicago to Michigan. And I always say that was the best, worst thing that ever happened, because I really feel like if I didn't have that arts community at my high school, that was really, yes, you can do this. Yes, you are good enough. Yes, you can make this a career. I don't think I would have done it. So.
And you had dancing classes in there too, you said?
Yeah. I had the choreographer in high school who was like, if you want to do musical theater, you got to learn how to dance.
Right.
And my first dance class I ever took was, the very first one was like a summer dance intensive thing, and I didn't make it through the warm-up. We were doing a jazz class, and the warm-up was so intense. I was sweating profusely. I thought I was going to hyperventilate, and I left. I left afterwards and just walked home. And I got home, and my mom was like, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the dance class." I was like, "I can't do it. I can't do it." It was so hard. And then she's like, "Okay, yes, you can. We'll go." So I went back like 14 levels and started taking dance class with like 10-year-olds. And I took a tap class with a bunch of 9-year-old girls, and I was 16 or something. So nothing will humble you like taking a dance class with a bunch of 9-year-olds.
And they were tapping circles,
just tapping circles
around
me. And still, I'm a horrible tap dancer. But then I got a couple of great dance teachers in high school who took me aside and helped me, and slowly, this is how we do this. But the greatest gift I had was taking partnering class. So it was this ballet company that Johnny Stellard and Mikey Winslow, these guys, danced with, and there was a partnering class once a week. And so I learned how to partner girls and pick them up and put them down, and that was the greatest gift, because then I moved to New York. I then danced all through college and tried to keep my skills up, but I moved to New York, and I've now gotten. Cinderella was a huge break for me, but I remember really kind of booking that job, I think, because of my partnering ability. I went into the dance call and I could see the choreographer, and these people like, okay, I don't know how this is going to go. We don't know this guy, and I could partner. And so I tell guys who are trying to go into musical theater in particular, like, learn how to partner, learn how to pick women up and put them down safely, and because that's a huge advantage.
I like how you have the caveat safely.
Yeah, safely.
Don't just drop them.
Yeah, exactly. So that was through high school, and but the dancing was I worked extremely hard at that from like junior year of high school through college, and have not been asked to do it as intensely as I thought I was going to. In my professional world, but it's been a lot of partnering. I mean, Frozen is no example. I mean, I'm picking Patty Murin up and setting her down safely, as safely as possible. So far so good.
Right. So you moved to New York in 2012, right?
Yeah.
What was the story of saying, all right, I'm graduating, now's the time?
Yeah, here we go. It was always the dream, always the goal, and Michigan was fantastic about that they really help you to move to New York, and they give you a community of graduates and lists of alumni and casting directors. And we had a great showcase in New York where I found an agent, and they really made that transition as smooth as it could be. My parents were super supportive. I feel super lucky to have them, because never once did they question this career choice to me. I'm sure they would close the bedroom door and be like, "Oh my God, we're never going to be able to retire because we're going to have to pay our artist son in New York." But they never ever batted an eye to me. They were super supportive always. And so I had a little graduation money, and I worked, and I moved to New York with I think I had $2,000. And I was like, "Oh, that'll be great. I'll be able to live for like 2 months, like 2.5 months. I'll just audition, And that money was gone in the first like 3 weeks. You know, paid my union dues, my rent, and it was like, oh my God, I have no money left. But it was a crazy transition because right at that time, you know, a preparation meeting opportunity, I played all these instruments and once had won the Tony and they needed more understudies. And so I showed up and it was unbelievable. And, you know, just, I don't know if you believe in fate or whatever, but I moved to New York right when they needed somebody who could play 10 instruments and who could talk on stage. And it was an incredible gift. That was, and still kind of is the greatest experience of my theatrical life.
So you had union dues right off the bat. Were you union coming out of college?
Yeah, I got my equity card at a little theater in Michigan called Mason Street Warehouse, which is, I did a bunch of shows with them during the summertime, and they gave me my equity card with a production of Avenue Q coming right out of college. And so I did Avenue Q, and then I had to pay, the good people at Actors Equity, a large chunk of money, and then and that was that. So I was lucky enough to be union coming to the city, which can always be a tricky thing for actors.
Right. Yeah, I think that's coming here has helped you out. Already being union has helped you out a lot. The way you tell the story compared to other stories that I've heard, you were helped so much by UM and the business. Like they seem to get the business side of it, which a lot of people coming here, they just show up and like, here I am. I was a star in high school. Give me lead roles. Yeah. And they just get like crapped on for, years. And
I work with high school students a lot, and I tell them, what are you looking for in a university? And I tell them, you gotta ask the hard questions of these universities. Like, what do you do to help your graduates? What is that transition like to get you to New York City or to LA or to Chicago? Who do you know and how can you help? Because that is what every business school does that. Every good college will have career fairs or have, alumni relations or whatever. And the arts community is no different. You have to, how do I find an agent? How do I go to open calls? What do I do? How do I get, these questions that you have to ask these questions and the universities have to help. And Michigan was incredible in that way. And so I had it almost as easy as you possibly could coming to New York after college and then having this amazing show present itself very shortly after graduation, and I went into Once in end of August of 2012. So it was pretty cushy. It was pretty sweet.
Do you remember where you were when you got the call?
Yeah, totally. I was in Newark Airport.
Really?
Which is not a very romantic place. But I was going home for a wedding. And I had gone to my final callback at 3 or 4. I had gone to my final callback in the morning with Martin Lowe, the music director, and we played through a good chunk of the entire score of Once on drums, ukulele, mandolin, guitar, bass, and piano. And I just went around the room at this studio and played through the majority of the score. And it went great. I mean, I was just super prepared. I had spent a lot of time with that cast album with Glenn Hansard's music, just learning how to play all of it. So I was really prepared. I knew what I was doing. It was super fun. And then I went and I worked a job at Javits Convention Center helping set up like a trade show for some friend of a friend to set up. So I was literally just doing manual labor at Javits Convention Center for 6 hours, and then went to Newark Airport and went through security and got a text from Stephen Copel, the casting director, who he's still just one of my all-time favorite people in the business. This guy has really helped me so much. And he texts me and he says, and I saw the text, and the text said, "You're going to be the new, you're going to be the new swing in Once. Call me." As I'm going through security, and then I have to, put the phone in the belt, and it goes through the conveyor, and I'm like, in a daze. And then I get the phone out and I call him, and Steven is so dry and he's hysterical. And I call him and I'm like, "Steven," and he's like, "Yeah, so you're going to make your Broadway debut?" And I was like, I'm crying in the middle of Newark Airport. And he's like, "Yep, super excited for you. I have to go. He's like going to see a show or something. He's like in the middle of his workday. And I called my mom, and mom starts crying, dad starts crying. Everybody's just like freaking out. And I'm making a whole scene in Newark Airport. I'm like on my knees, on the phone, right on the other side of security in Terminal C or whatever. And people probably thought something really horrible had happened, but something really wonderful had happened, actually.
That's funny. I can picture that. Oh, Newark Airport. And half the people didn't care, and half the people like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Get out of my way.
Yeah, get out of my way. I've got security to get through. Well, let's talk Frozen.
Yeah.
Because, that's why we're here. So you're a week in, yeah?
Yeah, week and a half.
And you replaced the wonderful John Riddle.
Yeah. Who I've known since college. He was
Really?
at Cincinnati when I was at Michigan. We've been friends. I've known him a long time. And, he texted me when I got the job and, big, wonderful, so excited for you to be filling. He said, I'm so excited for you to be filling the bad boy shoes. He's just a great guy.
You got the text as you were going through security at JFK.
It was at JFK. Yeah, exactly.
Well, how did the character change between the two of you? Are you trying to emulate him, or are you kind of like, have you been given the direction, just, here's the script, make it your own?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like good actors are just stealing from good actors. So I had the great opportunity to just sit there and watch him a couple times to see where he goes and, where he walks. And so I watched the show twice, really intently, and then I watched a couple more times, sort of on monitors and stuff to make sure I was going to the right, exiting in the right places and whatever. But I just sat there and I was like, oh, I'm stealing that, and I'm stealing that, and I'm stealing that, and because he was so funny and fantastic in the part, and then I just brought my own sort of little spin to it. And Michael Grandage and Adrian, the associate director, and Tim, the assistant director, and all of these people have just been so, kind of do whatever you want. Like here's where you stand here, don't get hit by this thing, do this dance step, but like kind of do what you want. And it's been really fun this week to figure out like who my Hans is. And so. I guess by the time this comes out, I'll probably have more shows under my belt. But for now, I'm figuring it out, and that's good.
Do you see a difference between evil and selfish in terms of intent?
With Hans, you mean?
Well, just in general, but then we'll relate it to Hans.
Evil and selfish.
Evil versus selfish.
Yeah.
Because I have in my notes here this seems like your first evil character, but then as I was about to say it, I don't think he's necessarily evil. I think he's just so narcissistically selfish that it just kind of he'll do whatever he takes. But he is the bad guy.
Yeah, and it is actually this year I played a lot of bad guys on TV. I did about 6 did like 6 guest stars on various little New York shows where I was killing people and selling drugs or something. I don't know. It just seemed like this has been the year of the bad guy for me, which has been kind of fun. But nothing on stage. No big, musical theater is my favorite thing. So I was, this is my first evil, I guess, musical theater role. But the cool thing is, it's not, we could get all sort of mammoty Shakespearean about evil characters not believing that they're evil. I think with Hans, it's just fun because I think he starts off with an intent and then it changes, but it just like at the top of the show, it's so funny and silly, and he meets this girl, and we talk a lot about like what are the ulterior motives and like what is he really doing, and the fun part for me is like it's just honestly I think he's completely smitten with Anna, and I think it's really fun, and we're having this Act 1 is Act 1 and Act 2 is Act 2. And so it's really kind of both sides of the coin. But I find his ambition to lead and have power is kind of the overall downfall, and where I think that happens over the course of the show, like when absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah. And
so all of a sudden the women are gone, and Anna runs after, tries to find Elsa, and now there's this guy who's been given a lot of power, and what's he going to do with it? And I'm only talking about Frozen.
Yes,
the musical.
of course, of course. What else could you be referring to in today's day and age?
Yeah, but it's really fun. It's a really fun thing. It's to be. I get booed at my curtain call. Which,
Do you really?
It's such a trip. And I mean, I assume people listening obviously see the movie or whatever, and I don't know how much of a surprise it is, but it is really fun to get to the end and have these little kids, and then like I go through the autograph line at the end, and these little kids look up at me like really scared and confused because it's real. I mean, for
them, it's
5,
real,
6,
yeah.
7, 8 years old, this is fully real. And I
Yeah.
remember seeing shows in Chicago and Broadway touring companies and Broadway shows and believing this is the real thing, and they look at me and they're like, I'm not sure about you, dude. And so I try to look down and I'm like, no, did you like the show? I'm not really that mean, I promise. But I don't know if they'll believe me, but they still take pictures and stuff.
Did you, I guess, do you enjoy this experience of being the bad guy versus normally being the good guy, or are you looking forward to a time when you can, get hugs and smiles on the show line after show line?
Yeah.
What the hell's wrong with me? What? Stage door line.
Stage door,
God,
autograph line.
brain fart. Yeah. Okay. Stage door.
Yeah, I like it. I don't. I kind of am just having a blast getting to do something, very different. The second half of the show and the second half of Act 2 is really unlike anything I've ever done. I find there's a lot of similarities between sort of Prince Topher and Cinderella and Act 1 Hans, and so I'm like, I understand that. I like that style of humor. And Patty and I have an absolute blast. The first show was terrifying. The second show, I was still nervous. And I think around show 4 or 5 of last week, we really started to have fun. And so Act 1 is super fun. And then Act 2, it just feels like something that I've never gotten to do before. And it's really exciting.
Right. What was your audition process like?
Yeah, it was pretty classic. I got an appointment from my agent. The first time was just for the associate team. So I went in for casting and for, I think it was just Brian, the music director, wasn't even there yet. I think it was just casting and the associate team.
How long ago was this?
This was, December.
So we're in March now, taping this.
Yeah, I got the job. I got to get my dates right, but it was pretty long. I had like one with the associate team. The next week I went back in for more associate team people. Then I had a dance call with, and that was with Rob Ashford and Sarah Oglebe. And then I came back again for the whole, for Michael Grandage and for Stephen and for Stephen Remus and Brian Yusufer. And then the very final, and then, so that was on like a Tuesday, and then the Wednesday was the final callback. And that was for Tom Schumacher and all Disney people. And that was kind of the big, I call that the don't screw it up day, because like you've done it now enough, and it's like, they're either going to choose you or they're not,
right.
But don't screw it up. Just go in and do what you did for the last 2 weeks. And so it was pretty involved, but that's kind of classic for big Broadway musicals. They really want to make sure you don't suck. And so they put you through the ringer a little bit. But it was great. And I was just telling the story last night because Michael Grandage is coming to the show next week. He said the nicest thing on my final callback, and there's a lot of Disney people there. It's a very stressful day.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in the room for my final callback, and he came up because I'd seen him the day before, and he said in his very British way, he was like, you did brilliantly yesterday. Just do the same thing today in front of all these people. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, everything's fine. Like, just take a deep breath and just do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Just hit the ball. And
I guess that's the point.
Yeah,
you have to repeat your amazing performance.
Yeah.
Now 8 times a week.
Yeah, but then it was fun because he gave me real freedom in that moment in Act 2 where you realize that oh my gosh, Hans is actually the bad guy, or he gave me full license to go. The actual direction he gave me was go full bad guy, because I think I was even too nice. I'm like, oh, I'm the bad guy, and he was like, just go for it. Full evil. I was like, okay, and so that was really fun to just well, turn up my mustache and, I don't know.
The Snidely whiplash inside you is coming.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that you said that you play Act One as if he's actually smitten with Anna.
Yeah.
And it never occurred to me that he actually liked her.
Mm-hmm.
Until you just said that. And I can believe that. I think he sort of does.
I think that if we get really into the sort of dramaturgy of Frozen, that Tell
me more.
Yeah, right. If he shows up already knowing, I don't know, if he shows up that he knows he wants to take over the kingdom, like he doesn't know anybody. He hasn't met Elsa, he hasn't met Anna, he hasn't met anybody, he doesn't know anything. And so he happens to bump into the sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me to not feel like an evil villain from the moment I walk on stage, to be like, oh my gosh, who is this girl? And then she leaves and she says Prince Hans is in charge. And then that's that kind of moment where it's like, okay, now I'm in charge now. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do to be in charge. But I like playing it like he actually, he likes her. I mean, how can you not? I mean, at first it's Patty Murin, and it's also, it's so infectious. She's funny and she's beautiful. And we're going to sing this ridiculous song about how love is an open door. That takes a real sociopath to not, have like any fun, So yeah, I enjoy it.
How many times have you seen the original animated movie?
Honestly, only once.
Really?
I just saw it one time, and I saw it like a little bit after it came out. And
You don't have kids then?
I don't have kids. I saw it and I loved it. And then when the audition came in, I was like, let's just figure this out for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I need to go back and watch it again, actually, because for a second I kept asking the question of like, oh wait, is this in the movie? Is this in the movie? And people would look at me like I was crazy, like I hadn't done my homework, which I guess I hadn't. And there are some things in there's a ton of stuff in the show that was not in the movie, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But then like Fixer Upper in Act 2, which is this big fun dance number. I was in rehearsal and I asked if that was in the movie. And people were like, yeah, of course. Like, who are you? And watch the movie. It made $1 billion. Like, you should know this movie. This is a really important animated movie. Anyway, so.
Yeah, it's my 4, Let It Go is still my 4-year-old's. He's like, this is my favorite song, Daddy. He likes that. Yeah, we'll listen to the soundtrack. They like the ice song at the very beginning of the movie where they're cutting through the ice. I guess the prologue.
Yeah, I got a lot of. It's crazy when you get into a show like this, how many people with kids come out of the woodwork. There's a lot. I'm getting a lot of text messages and emails about, people I haven't heard from in a while. It's my kid's favorite movie. I'm like, oh, you're the only one.
Well, thanks. I'll archive that.
Yeah, exactly. No.
So you've worked with a couple very big names, Cassie and Patty being 2 of them, obviously, but you've had Carly Rae Jepsen, worked with her in Cinderella,
yep.
And then you were actually understudying and working with Orlando Bloom in Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever gotten starstruck working with anybody?
Starstruck. I don't really get starstruck. I get starstruck by maybe people that some people don't get starstruck by. Like when I met Glenn Hansard backstage at Once for the first time, he kind of showed up, just no big deal. He was just seeing the show, and I couldn't remember my own name. I was like, I'm just so grateful for you, because I like Falling Slowly was one of the first songs I learned how to play on the guitar. But like Orlando, when you get in a rehearsal room with people, even the big stars, and I've done readings or benefits or whatever, and big stars, I would say for the vast majority of them who are drawn to the theater are just people who happen to be super famous. Mm-hmm. And Orlando just wanted to be as good as possible, and he worked so hard. And Carly was the same way, and Keke Palmer was the same way, and and then obviously, the Broadway, for Corey Cotton, Laura Osnes, and Casey Patton, of course. Like, they just want to do a good job, and they're just people. So I do get starstruck. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Maybe come back to that one.
Was there anybody that you'd like to meet that you haven't gotten the chance to yet?
Paul McCartney.
Yeah,
if there's any chance in the world that he came to see Once, like before I came into it, I think. I could be making that up, but he did not come to see it while I was in it. But Springsteen is another one, and he did come to see once when I was in it. And he was going to come backstage, and we were all ready. And then there was like a bit of like a security kerfuffle where like people were asking for autographs and kind of made a scene around him. And so then he kind of hopped in his car and drove off, which was a total bummer. But yeah, I'm just the biggest Beatles fan. And, so if there was ever a world where I bumped into him, that would be really cool.
Well, I know Paul McCartney is a huge listener of this, huge fan of this podcast. He writes me every day. Sir Paul, reach out to Joe here.
Please, God. That's so good.
You mentioned earlier you've had guest spots on stuff. So you've had on TV, so NCIS New Orleans, Chicago Fire, Deception, All My Children, soap opera, yeah, and the Carrie Diaries. Did that all fit in between, like while you're doing shows, or do you do it on time off? How does that work?
Yeah, the TV thing, New York is an amazing place. There's so much TV being shot here and cast here all the time. And I think a lot of musical theater and Broadway people want to, pursue that as well. You see a lot of amazing people who got their start in the theater and got their start on Broadway who are, Billy Porter was the biggest thing at the Oscars the other night, like Broadway legend.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It just like unbelievable. I went to college with Darren Criss. These people are who like started in the theater and they're now having huge TV
Darren Criss went to UM too?
Yeah, he was an acting major. Yeah. Wow. We actually played music together in a little breakfast cafe for like hungover students on Saturday and Sunday mornings my freshman year of college. This place called Sava's in Ann Arbor, which is still there. And that was how I met him, what seems like a million years ago. But the TV stuff there's just a lot of it. And all of the majority of the stuff I've done, I just did an episode of The Code, which is a show that's going to come out on CBS I think in April, it's premiering. Pippa Sue is on that. Mm-hmm. And then the NCIS and that sort of stuff all happened on breaks. I was kind of chilling, hanging around, going on audition, get a job. And that was really a lot in the last year. I think I did like 5 or 6 in the last year alone. And you're just grinding, we're just New York actors trying to string it together. And so I actually just did my taxes the other day and I handed this stack of forms to my accountant and I was like, here you go. Here's 12 W-2s of, but you just try to figure it out. But the TV stuff has been really fun and, try to do a bit of that, in conjunction with or on time off. And
if you had your druthers, would you do theater full time or would you do TV or movies full time?
I like the TV stuff because it's different every day. Sometimes when you get, 6 months or 8 months or a year into a long run of a Broadway show, it isn't in its essence the same thing every day. And you just, for me, you get up there and you catch the look of, with Frozen, you catch the look of some little girl in an Elsa costume and immediately you're like, oh, okay, I know I'm doing the show today. Like it's going to be, I don't think that's going to be a problem, but the TV stuff is fun because it's every day is a little different. It's a little, where are we today? What are we shooting today? In my perfect world, I'd kind of honestly be where I am doing Frozen and then maybe get to do like a couple days on a movie and then go back to Frozen. Mm-hmm. And so I'm able to I'm here, I'm in Frozen, I'm doing the thing. But, I'd like to kind of do it all at the same time, which is extremely greedy. But why not put it to the universe that I would like it all, please. I'd like it all. I'd like it all.
Okay, Hans.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right.
There we go.
Kind of sounds horrible, but
no, I think it's completely doable. There are so many people that they'll, like I followed James Iglehart, a friend of mine.
Yeah.
It seems like he's always leaving Hamilton and coming back, and he's like doing these TV shows, and all of a sudden he's popping up with Jonah Hill and in Maniac on Netflix. And I'm like, well,
And Patty just shot a Christmas movie like 2 weeks ago. Like right as I was going into the show, she was shooting a movie. My friend Ashley Park, who I went to college with, who's in Mean Girls, was doing a Netflix show the last couple of weeks and months, and you're able to kind of do a lot of it. And that's why New York is so exciting because there's just so much so much happening. You can do your, do musicals, do plays, do TV, do film, do all of it. So,
well, the nice thing is that you can film during the day.
yeah.
Yeah, because if you, on a one show day, you just go in at night. That's your day starts at what, 6:30, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, and that's the dream. And Bobby and I were talking about it in the dressing room the other day because some people Brian just started working on a new lab, new workshop. Like, what are we calling them now? I think we're calling them labs. Yes, it doesn't matter. So our music director started working on a new show, and Bobby and I were like, isn't that the dream? You just want to be like doing new stuff all day, doing your Broadway show at night. It's so, it can be a really rewarding career when you're working a lot. When you're not working, it's pretty horrible all the time. But when you're working, it's pretty sweet.
Have you had any dark times when you haven't been working?
Yeah, I mean, coming off Cinderella, I didn't work for almost a year. I did Cinderella, that closed in 2015, and then we did the out of town of Bandstand at Paper Mill in the fall of that year. And so that was the only time that I worked in 15. And then in 2016, I basically didn't work at all. And so it was like I was catering and waiting tables and bartending and just grinding. And that was really, that'll, again, you're on a catering job and somebody's like, wait a minute, I just saw you as the prince in Cinderella, right? And I'm holding a tray of food, and it's like, yes, you did, and I also have to pay my rent, and so here we are. But that was that was an extremely informative time too, because there's certainly no shame in bartending, or there's no shame in any of that. I feel like there's a shame in credit card debt. Like you gotta grind, you gotta figure out a way to pay your bills. And as an actor, like you can be super successful, and then you can not be super successful, and you can be on top of the world. And my wife and I talk about, you save your ducats, you just stash it away. Don't, I kind of want to take expensive vacations, and she's like, no, we need to save for a rainy day. But yeah, so
well, hopefully it will keep coming.
Yeah,
and you can do other things like start a Broadway hockey league.
Yeah, Broadway
which
hockey.
I know you want to do. Yeah,
I talked about that at one point. I think there'd be like 4 of us, there'd be like 4 or 5 guys skating around in the Broadway Hockey League. But I love the Broadway Softball League. I play in the Broadway Softball League on Thursdays. And so that's super fun. And I also don't think producers would love a Broadway Hockey League. I think, Hans needs all his teeth.
I was going to say, you still have all your teeth.
Yeah, this one, half of this one's fake. Half of
really?
the right one had to be like a soldered back on. Yeah,
Oof.
I get all sorts of, busted nose and stitches. I got these weird scars on my chin from stuff, but nobody can see that because it's a podcast. So,
well, you can send a selfie when you do the Instagram takeover.
Yeah.
You can do like the story
be like,
of all your scars.
Here's this. Yeah. Oh, tough guy. Yeah.
That's fun. No, I always played roller or hockey on rollerblades.
Yeah, roller hockey.
Roller hockey, if you want to call it that. Yeah, because in North Carolina we didn't have ice. We had ice when it snowed on the street, but not like an ice rink where we could go play.
Right.
So yeah, I'm pretty decent with like a stick and rollerblades, but not so good with the ice skates.
Right.
So anyway, we're wrapping up here.
Great.
We've been chatting for a great time. Thank you for this. And there's 3 standard questions that we ask everyone to close out the podcast. First one, very simply, what motivates you?
That's a good question. That's a kind of meta question. What motivates me? I need to pay my bills. No.
Okay, Hans.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is turning into a real Hansian. No, I find that I set out on this bizarre path because I wanted, to be an actor, because I wanted to tell stories and I wanted to play make-believe when I was a kid. And I find I just want to keep playing make-believe as long as people will let me. And also, I steal this from Danny Burstein, who I worked with in Moulin Rouge this summer. He said, the only thing I ever wanted was the respect of my peers. And I think that I'd steal that completely. I want people to be like, oh yeah, I worked with Joe, respect Joe, love Joe. So yeah, those 2.
All right. Number 2, then, what advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now starting out down a similar path?
Definitely to other, to people who want young people who want to be actors, to consume as much as possible, see everything, read, watch movies, watch TV, go on YouTube binges of your favorite singers, figure out like consume as much as possible because that's not wasting time. That's gaining knowledge in the same way that we go to school and, it's just a different type of learning. That was the best advice I got from a college professor was it's a different type of work, and so I would say just consume as much as possible and be nice to people. We had a talk back the other day and Ryan Redmond said that to this group of kids. And I totally agree with that. Just try to be good to people. Try to be nice. There's a lot of negativity and it's a very competitive industry where a lot of people will, who, I don't want to say stab you in the back, but there's a lot of negativity. And so to try to be a good person, to be nice. And then to my younger self, I would say don't be scared. I think that I was scared of succeeding sometimes and therefore would sort of self-sabotage, like I wouldn't learn my lines for the audition.
Why?
And I don't know. You're like, it's like, why don't you do the math homework? And so I wouldn't do the work. And I think that was a fear of failure, a fear of succeeding, even the fear of what that means. And so, and I still struggle with this sometimes to just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the unknown. Don't be afraid of just don't be afraid.
My mind is going so many places to try to figure out the motivation behind that. And I totally get it. I'm the same way a lot of times is if you don't try, then you don't have the possibility of failing.
Yeah.
But there's still, it's deeper than that. Because why are you afraid of failing?
Yeah, I can't totally answer that. I guess I've seen in myself, whether it's not doing your homework in high school because for, whatever reason, to going in front of a huge casting office and leaving and being like, I didn't know my lines. Why didn't I know my lines? And it's just work. It's preparation, but it's a fear of failing. But you're absolutely right. If you don't put yourself out there, you can't, get hurt. And so, and I think that that's the hardest part about being an actor is you're just putting yourself out there over and over and over and over again. And so that's a big one for my younger self. Just be totally ready to fail and don't worry about it. Don't be afraid of failure.
Yeah, I mean, this business is a lot of rejection, but rejection does not equal failure.
Exactly.
Because sometimes you're just not, you don't even look right.
Right.
That could be, this is one of the few industries where you have to get discriminated against because of your looks.
Yeah. Yeah, they can do that.
Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
If you can only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, which show would you see?
Passing Strange. Passing Strange is my favorite musical. Stu, Spike Lee filmed it. It used to be on Netflix. It's not on Netflix anymore. I saw that. I watched that movie about once or twice a year. It is. Have you seen it?
No, I don't.
It's a musical about mothers and sons. It's about being an artist. It's about being a musician. And I saw it. I studied abroad in London my junior year of college, and it completely changed my whole life. And still, I'll see some of the actors who were in that. I mean, Colin Domingo, the Rebecca Naomi Jones, and I'll see them walking around New York or be an event or something. And this Oklahoma that's coming up, Rebecca Naomi Jones is in it. And I'm totally starstruck by those actors because it's my favorite show. And so I've never met any of them, but I think if I met them, I'd get really weird because I just want to talk about well, what did you do at this point? What did you do at that point? And it's just about, it's a show that I have a great relationship with my mom, but I find shows about mothers and sons, fathers and sons, just wreck me, family stuff. And also what it means to be an artist. And that show to me is such a comment on what it is to be an artist and to be in love. That it's also a love story, and it's how do you keep a relationship going in the arts? And I just got married in October, but it's like, how do you, it's about relationships, it's about family, it's about music and art. And so I watch it a couple times a year. I'm so glad it's filmed. I think that I hope that there's more of that in the future for Broadway, because I think the archival purposes and is really great. So that's that's that one for sure. And it's an easy answer. That one.
Yeah, that was quick.
Yeah,
Most people, they're like, "Oh, I hate you. Why'd you ask me that?"
Yeah.
And then you were just like, "All right, I got this
that's
one.
it.
Easy."
That's it. And I love so many things. Shows and theater, and Once is another one. I mean, I was so lucky. I still talk about it all the time. It was my favorite show. I saw it 3 times, and then I got to be in it. And but Passing Strange is truly one of my all-time favorite pieces of art. Period.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we can find more of you on Twitter and Instagram, Joe_Carroll Mitch.
Yeah.
For Michigan.
Michigan, yeah.
Yep. And then you can get more of me, Theater_podcast on Instagram and Twitter, or Facebook.com/official theater podcast. Listen and subscribe. Please rate this podcast. If you're listening on a podcast player, go rate it, leave a comment. I love to hear that stuff. You can reach me via feedback at thetheaterpodcast.com. This is produced by Jillian Hockman, and the music you hear right now, beginning and end, our pre-roll and post-roll, is all by Jukebox the Ghost. Joe Carroll, thank you again for coming. This has been so fun.
Thank you very much.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.